This is the Big Chat Small Talk podcast for dynamic, engaged minds who love thought-provoking discussions about big life challenges in an approachable way. Join me, Bernie Bennett,
and me, Louise Anderson, to challenge your own perspective, to share insights and wisdom on navigating life's demands. Let us have a big chat about important issues in a small talk way.
It can be argued that today's parents are being urged to encourage their sons to be more emotional and sensitive to the needs of others. When we think of femininity, traits include particular roles in society, stereotypes, behaviours and appearances that are associated with women and girls. The less dominant a boy is deemed to be, the more acceptable he is viewed in society. So I think the question is, are we encouraging our boys to embrace traits and behaviours traditionally associated with femininity? And can this actually be beneficial to their development? What do you think?
So it appears that we're moving towards it, isn't it? Like we're trying to encourage boys to be more like girls. And then we're trying to encourage girls to be more like boys. But just focusing on the boys, I think with society, sense and sensibilities change.
Right.
And the things that we associated with being a typical boy, you know, aggressive, fighting it out, speaking up for themselves, etc., being dominant, those have become, I suppose, seen as less attractive for men to partake in.
Right.
But at the same time, we're encouraging our girls to act exactly like that. But I think what I think has definitely probably triggered this more than anything is that women are becoming more independent. The role of a man has changed in society. Back in the day, it was very different. In our grandparents' time, the men were the providers, they were the protectors, etc.
Well, back then as well, you know, society used to dictate that a man proved that he's a man.
He proves that he's a man, exactly.
That he's strong, that he is tough, that he don't cry and
Stiff
man
up, man up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you didn't, you know, you were considered a wuss and you were told to suck it up.
Suck it up. It hurts, but it's, you know, no pain, no gain, basically.
But we're kind of wanting them to be a little bit more soft, a little bit more
emotionally intelligent.
But all of this intimacy traits are kind of coded in femininity. So it's kind of really interesting why we idealize the principle. It's devalued, in fact, and it's devalued because if a boy, you know, you want him to be more softer and feminine, but if he was to throw like a girl, that would be deemed not a great thing for him to have done, right?
Well, exactly. But the thing is, I think this is the thing with sense and sensibilities of society being changed. You know, there's changing societal norms now for boys or for men in general.
Yeah.
You know, men are playing more of a role at home because we've got both parents out working. So there's, you know, that sharing the load kind of thing kicks in. But I think if we zoom it back into the examples that you said, you know, be a man, stiff upper lip, don't cry, or you're going to be called a wuss, etc. I think what's happened is that, and there have been key role models actually in the world, in modern pop culture as well, that have shown that you can still be masculine, you can still be a man, but you can show emotional intelligence and compassion. I mean, I love Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. He sums it up completely for me. Okay. You know, he is a masculine guy. He was a wrestler. He started off as a wrestler, and you see it on social media his interaction with his daughters. He does ballet with them, puts on a tutu, paints his nails, plays with their dolls.
I haven't seen any of that. Wow.
But it's amazing. So what it's showing is that you can be a man or you can be, you know, a boy, but you're not less of a boy if you are, you know, you're more sensitive to other people's needs. You're a bit more aware of what is different for girls as it is for boys. You don't always have to be the best on the football field. There are other skill sets that a man can have that make him a man, but he doesn't have to be, you know, seen to be physically or athletically strong.
And do you think that's bad that our boys are seen as physically or athletically strong? Because what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that at all, but that's just not the only way a boy should be able to be seen. But I do think there are some kind of biological traits that, will determine that boys tend to be more, you know, well, they say boisterous. Yeah. So let's just break
rough
down.
And tumble.
Yeah, rough and tumble, that's it. You know, rather than speak it out, they punch it out. You know, there are those
and
natural...
I actually really like that because the girls go on for ages and they hold it for days, but a guy would just smack it out, that's done, and they're friends again and they move on.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why sometimes I prefer working with men, because you just have it out with them, boom, done in an email, and that's it's over. With women, they will hold that stuff for years.
And wait for their opportunity.
But I think with boys, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting them to understand that there are emotional sides of seeing things, because we've heard all the stories as well where, you know, the statistics still show that the suicide rates in young teenage boys is still higher than in young teenage girls and with men in general. And I think some parts, especially in the West, it's never been celebrated for men to be open about how they feel about things. I mean, in recent times, and again with high profile public figures, the men are beginning to talk about how, you know, they've been affected by depression. You wouldn't have heard that 20, 30 years ago. That would be, women are always associated with talking about how they feel or whether they're down or whether they're low, etc. But for men, that's taboo. So if part of what we're trying to do with our young boys, trying to get them to be a bit more sensitive and emotionally aware, is helping them. It's not to tear them down and to make them more controllable for us women. Because some people may argue that point too. But I think if we're doing it to help them become fully fledged, rounded individuals, then yeah, I'm for it.
Well, I actually think that's supported. I found something online, APA guidelines for psychological practice with boys and men. And they said in there that traditional masculinity, which is marked by dominance and aggression, is harmful to our boys and our men. Men socialized in this way are less likely to engage in healthy behavior. So that kind of gives kudos to what you've just said, actually. So if that is true, what has been the tickers that have moved us closer to this? So there appears to be a movement towards this. Can it be explained?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I think we have become, you know, there's a lot of things in history here, but we don't have time to go into all of that. But if you think, especially like in the Western society, you know, with the empire building, colonial times, etc., being a man in those times was about being aggressive and going out there and fighting wars. You know, you went through these. There was a lot of things going on geopolitically that you know, you had to fall in line with those things quite earlier on. But we're in peacetime. It's the good times. We've been in peacetime for a long time. We're becoming better educated. There's more awareness. Psychology, you know, has a massive platform than what it would have done in our grandparents and even parents' time. So there's more awareness as to what makes more fully rounded individuals and what helps with making people be able to deal with life matters and situations in
mental health as well.
Yeah, mental health is another big one too.
So I was kind of looking at changes in societal norms, the feminist movement.
Yeah.
There was also an awareness of this, which I disagree with, toxic masculinity. Media representation has shifted this along greatly. Increasing representation of non-traditional gender roles and expressions in media and popular culture contributes to this diverse understanding of masculinity and femininity. You've also got social cultures and movements, parents and education. Because as parents, we are increasingly encouraging children to explore their authentic self. And whatever that means is being presented as more feminine for our boys. There is also the psychological well-being and the idea that them being able to express themselves, being able to cry and that not be a bad thing is better for their health.
Definitely.
So overall, the trend of feminizing men is part of a broader societal shift towards challenging rigid gender norms and promoting greater acceptance of all gender identities and expression. And I think that can only be a good thing for our boys.
I think so. I agree.
Great.
Thanks for listening to the Big Chat Small Talk with Bernie and Louise.
Follow us on Instagram at Big Chat Small Talk.